They don't really eat sushi or stuffed raw fish.
We don't eat everybody's food, in particular potato salad.
I don't know what black folks don't do that other races do or don't do as well.
One of my good friends is a social psychologist at UCLA, and he's actually done a lot of research around what stereotypes do to people. Not just that they're conceptually bad, but what those expectations do and how that shows up in economic outcomes and health outcomes and incarceration outcomes. It damages actual black people.
Black folks don't go to the doctor. This doctor who? Although we should because of hypertension and diabetes being so rampant in our community.
I disagree. I'm going to the doctor now. Yeah, I believe in early prevention, taking care of yourself, health and fitness. So we go to the doctor. Yeah, black folk do that.
My grandfather, who lives in Jamaica still, he refused to go to the doctor.
I know my grandfather didn't, and he had diabetes. He would go for it, but knowing that you have something that's not feeling right, I don't know if it's that you're scared and don't want to know, but he ended up having to get his foot taken because of diabetes. You know, and I guess he didn't have feeling for a while, but didn't say anything either.
My own mother didn't like to go to the doctor very much, and when she did, she often had bad experiences. My mom actually passed away from colon cancer in 2005, and the last hospital she was in Massachusetts was just a terrible experience. I remember her in upstate New York complaining about the doctor, not fully listening, and sort of being a bit more dismissive.
My father was actually very skeptical of doctors. He thought that sometimes they would like to say things are wrong with you just so that they can get paid. Because when you have insurance and something's wrong with you and all this is wrong with you, well, now they're getting paid for doing this test and that test.
I come from a family where my dad died of cancer when I was very young, so like going to the doctor and having like checkups and all of these things was super important to my family because it's just like, don't get sick, don't get sick.
Black folk don't go to the doctor. Well, I completely disagree with that. However, I think that has a historical basis as well, in that, you know, at one point during the days of segregation, there wasn't no doctor to go to. In the days of slavery, they would bring the veterinarian to look at the enslaved people. And of course, he would stamp them ready to go back to work when they're sick as a dog, so they hated him.
Black folks don't go to the doctor. A lot of them don't, and I think that that's primarily a generational thing. My father, to this day, will actually almost burst into tears anytime he has to go to the dentist. Where they grew up in Philadelphia, it was in North Philly, and it was the 30s, 40s, you know, it was the Depression. And there was what I think was a community college in the area where it was all white people. And my parents, when they were kids, would go to this place for free examinations, free dental exams and health checks and that kind of stuff. And what they were doing was experimenting on them. So they were drilling into their teeth where there were no cavities, and they were poking and prodding them and giving them unlicensed drugs and all this kind of crazy stuff.
Black folk don't trust the medical industry because of a lot of reasons. I think historically it stems from the medical industry using black people as test subjects against their will.
You have the history of the Tuskegee experiments and the idea that doctors are being used to abuse your people, so that breeds a lot of distrust.
The United States government in the military gave black soldiers syphilis, injected them with syphilis to find out what would happen. So basically there were these experimental, monkeys, if you will, where they just did this.
They were actually lied to and told that they were being treated for something when they were actually being given a disease and dying off from that. So
I think that follows through, and especially the time period where my parents grew up during the Depression, when these things happened, you don't want to go to a white doctor because you're afraid that they're going to do something to you. They're going to hurt you, they're going to maim you, they're going to kill you.
My parents made a point when I was growing up in Maryland to take me to all black doctors, just so I at least knew that existed. Depending on what your cultural background is, a lot of people prefer herbs and roots and kind of an old-fashioned way of doing things where they feel like that old-fashioned way supersedes modern doctors.
We have folk remedies and old wives' tales that are still, even though it was in the past, they still kind of sneak their way up into our day-to-day life.
My daddy's from the country, so I know a lot of times with them, and the stuff seemed to work too. Like they came up, they had their own things for, ailments.
I don't think modern, younger black people are that way, though. I think that might be the older generation.
You have very unequal distribution of healthcare services. So the idea that there even is a doctor versus a clinic or an emergency room near enough to your home limits people's access to proper healthcare services.
If you have the ability, if you have money or good insurance to go to the doctor all the time, I think you will.
I think it deals with health care and who has it and who doesn't, who can afford it and who can't.
So I think a lot of black folk wait until I am super sick, like I have to be on my deathbed for me to go to the doctor and pay this money.
Now, I mean, it's very fashionable to go to the doctor and to have many specialists and, the doctor said, and I have and I take and, and if you can name all your ailments and so on and what the doctor told you, how limited you are and so forth. So it's like a little sign of, having arrived a bit, I think.
Can be seen on YouTube's Everyday Health channel. We'll be right back.